Change is often wonderful, but as I sat across from the new boss that Monday morning, I had hardly encountered a week. The change felt like a dagger in the back of my palm as my cup of office coffee cooled. Logan Pierce, whose name was Logan, Pierce 30, had a pricey suit-gelled hair of the sort of on his first day. I met a man who listened like a brick block while spoke like a TED presentation. I have been skipping vacations for the past 10 years, totaling 3,214 early mornings and late nights, patched systems and silent victories. I needed respect instead of praise. And now, with his lips, Logan smirked professionally and was ready to discard everything before even understanding how the coffee maker operated. He stippled his fingers and leaned back as if he had rehearsed this exact position in front of a mirror. "Jenna," he said in a slick, sales-like accent, "this isn't personal. We're just reorganizing, you know? Fresh faces, fresh enthusiasm." I gazed. "Of course," I answered after staring at him for a moment to allow the silence to settle, my voice even. His smile expanded as he said, "Thanks for the notice." He believed I was being cooperative in a professional manner, even appreciative, but I was secretly not yet upset as I stood gently brushing dust from my blazer that didn't exist. My heart was racing, but my face stayed composed and polished, the version of me they had accustomed to being calm, self-assured, and silent. I was familiar with every inch of this facility, every flaw in its systems, and every code shortcut since I constructed them from the beginning, and he was unaware that the software he was going to wager on, the patent, was not theirs to control, nor was the company's future with my software. I left the office with my name in my name filed years ago, without a doubt. The hallway seemed longer as the door behind me clicked silently without another word. Fluorescent lights buzzing over me more than usual. My coworkers were hooked too. The story had traveled, as it always did in corporate buildings, with their screens whispering and stealing glances. Officially, but quickly, no one looked into my eyes. When loyalty turns into conveniently, I slowly packed my belongings back at my desk. A picture of myself and my coffee mug with a fractured handle and a little brother from an Oregon hiking trip, Wallace, the cactus I had named, managed to survive 3 office relocations that I purposefully shifted, allowing the usual ground me, my USB key, my badge, and lastly, my laptop. At that point, the pain started, not from rage or despair, but from something worse: treachery. I had developed that system on restless evenings when the allocated funds didn't to make room for another engineer. I had meticulously recorded each step, created each patch, and ensured that nobody could manipulate it without the right keys. I had notified the board about my keys. Years ago, they agreed to sign the agreements after I put my name on the software, or I walked, filed the paperwork, but they never remember the woman who did it. Curtain till it falls down. By the time I arrived home, the stress of the day had started to subside. I put on sweats, sat at my kitchen counter, and gazed at my laptop's flickering cursor in blankness. Rather than crying, I felt a wave of icy clarity come over me. Logan Pierce had made an error. He believed I could be replaced. He believed he was saving money. I was merely a worker. He was unaware that the core of Archer Systems was I owned the database infrastructure, client dashboards, and unique logic trees that kept every transaction cohesive. And because the license needed to be renewed every 5 days, I would make sure he was aware of it. Fiscal quarter, and it ended at midnight on Friday. I had 2 choices: renew it or not, silently and go with my dignity, or let the program return to limited mode, which renders a closed machine unusable. Without my secret key, there would be no hacking or sabotage, just business as usual. Guidelines. I took a lengthy drink of my tea while mentally considering every possible scenario, if they so desired. They would have to scuttle back to save themselves, not for my job, but for authorization to continue operating the business. The same type Logan had worn this morning tugged at the corner of my mouth. Next Friday would be a memorable day, and I wouldn't even have to worry about Tuesday morning came like any other. But the atmosphere in the office felt different, too. Silent, too conscious, I entered Archer through the front doors. For 10 years, I had systems like this every day, and no one stopped me, of course. Since paperwork takes time, they hadn't processed anything yet. Until then, I was still officially working, and I was expected to be professional and smile, but it wasn't. Logan's office door was closed, and he was likely busy adjusting his chair and hanging his degrees on the wall, feigning to comprehend the company he had recently inherited. He was unaware that I was already preparing for the gradual breakdown of his ideal first week of 5 days. All they had left, I arrived at my workstation, the desk I used to refer to as mine, and discovered the wide eyes of the young woman. Seated there suggested that she had just graduated from graduate school. She got up as soon as she spotted me, her fingers trembling, saying, "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't realize you'd be." She stumbled as she entered, but I smiled nicely and said, "No worries. Transition period. I'm here to help." Her name was Emily, and she had been hired to take my job, but she was unaware of the whole situation. As I pulled a chair next to her and started to explain the system, she gave me a tight, uncomfortable smile. I showed her she asked insightful questions about the user interface, the coding structure, and the operation of the client dashboards. Considerate, yet I could see that it was too much to handle. The system was intricate, intentionally intricate, not out of animosity, but rather out of need. Archer Systems was able to. There were no shortcuts for the hundreds of millions of client data. Accuracy was needed in every aspect of the architecture, deep experience which neither Emily nor Logan possessed. As the hours went by, I maintained a cool demeanor and tone of voice. I wasn't mean. Didn't want to undermine her because she wasn't the issue. Rather, she was a sign of a deeper illness in this sector. The belief that experience could be downloaded and worth could be substituted a revision. But some items cannot be changed, and some people shouldn't be. I went to the cafe across the street at noon and sat with my laptop by the window. I opened the original patent files that I had saved in front of me, stored for years in secured cloud storage, so I went over each line again to make sure everything was airtight. All rights, including expansions and derivative systems, belong exclusively to the original architect, unless specifically transmitted. By a signed and written agreement, Archer Systems never had such an agreement, believed they would require one, which was their initial error. I took a leisurely drink of my coffee as I opened a second tab and started writing the official notification of revocation, calm, legal, efficient. It would return their systems to evaluation mode with limited access, but it wouldn't completely lock them out, restricted functionality, just enough to render them immobile. Do you recall my name? I haven't sent it yet, not today. The time has to be ideal. If I turned in the notice on Friday, the license would have expired at 11:59 p.m. It would initiate the automated reversion by business closing at 6 a.m., precisely when their most important weekly report was due, was required immediately, after clients accessed the upgraded dashboards. The fallout would be immediate and untraceable. I shut down the laptop and reclined in my chair, my gaze straying. Logan was leaving the building with his phone glued to his ear as he walked towards the window across the street. He laughed at something loud and self-assured without seeing that the business he was running was Emily was waiting upstairs, balanced on a wire that belonged to me and that I could cut at any time. I helped her troubleshoot a small issue in the analytics area. Observing her hands quiver a little as she typed, "You okay?" "Yeah, just a lot to take in," she said when asked gently. "They told me the system was simple." She paused, staring at me, and I laughed briefly. They usually do. I saw her gaze. "Are you assisting me? It's not your—" I didn't harbor resentment towards her because it was her fault. My conflict it was with the conceited and those who believed that power meant you may throw away the cornerstone of your success and still be successful. By 5:30 p.m., I had nothing left when I left the workplace. I had my phone in my hands, but I didn't need to bring anything else because they were already on my work. The query. The loudness of the impact, and whether anyone would attempt to halt it before it was too late were more important than whether they would fall. The atmosphere in the office had shifted by Wednesday, albeit it was first modest. Whispers in private, longer than normal meetings, a barrage of emails with I was able to identify the warning flags in topic lines like urgent dashboard delay or client login timeout. The system started coughing and stumbling right away, but it wasn't crashing yet. I understood exactly why Emily had come up to me in the first place, like an engine that had been overworked and never serviced. Her face was etched with irritation in the late morning, and she held a sticky note with Jenna quickly scrawled client IDs, saying, 3 different users are unable to access the analytics dashboard, and when I attempt to reset, the system displays an authentication problem. Their access. I did what you instructed me to do, and she was trying her hardest. Observed that she was intelligent, but the system had layers and wasn't designed for novices. Even seasoned programmers had to solve these conditional structures like puzzles. I'll take a look, I said quietly, and we sat at the desk together. The coding wasn't the issue, was in the license, and a gentle countdown had started. It was quiet, but if you knew, you could see it. The back-end logs contain a warning message that indicates that the evaluation time is about to expire in 2 days. Expect limited access or renew your license. The system was following its instructions flawlessly. Everything was playing out just the way I had planned it, and Logan and no one else knew what was about to happen. At 2 p.m., the office held its in-the-glass conference room, where everyone is gathering as usual. Logan stood at the head of the table like a man who still thought he had everything under control. His tone was upbeat, but I could see it. Was phony, too cheerful and well-groomed, but I just wanted to say how happy I am of everyone's. He started to clasp his hands together in an attempt to adjust. I know that changes can be difficult. However, I have faith that this squad is headed in the right direction, especially with new talent like Emily. Direction. Once more, the casual disregard for experience was present, praising new blood as though knowledge and devotion were liabilities. Rather than assets, I remained silent and simply observed. Before we end up, Logan asked if anyone had any questions. He looked around the room and saw after a moment of silence, Anthony from IT held up his hand and said, "Yeah, some clients have been reporting partial outages on their dashboards and having trouble logging in. We're investigating, but tracing. Logan has been difficult, yet he has grown without flinching or blinking." He smiled and replied, "We'll figure it out." I almost burst out laughing. His response, growing pains, and nobody else spoke. The meeting concluded in tense pause, during which staff members exchanged sidelong glances before heading back to their desks. Anthony walked me on, his walked out, and murmured to himself, "I know it's getting worse," I said quietly. I opened my terminal at my own station and performed a passive diagnostic, not to fix it, but to observe it. The system was still operational, but small issues with the refresh latency API were becoming more serious. Call failures and sporadic. Timeouts were only tremors. The actual collapse will occur on Friday. Logan might have been told to verify the license prior to the earthquake, but I chose not to. Years ago, they choose to forget. They opted for conceit above deference. Now they could handle the repercussions. That night, as I was leaving the building, I noticed Logan in the lobby having a conversation. Enthusiastically to a caller, his voice was suddenly strained and laced with tension, not terror yet, just irritation. He looked at me as I went by. I nodded curtly and gave it back with a bland look, but in his mind I was still a vestige of the old guard being phased away, merely a box to tick as a courtesy. He hadn't realized the connection yet. I prepared tea, lighted a candle, and I opened my laptop and read the revocation letter that was ready and in draft form, once more in accordance with patent number 118543B. The developer retains complete control of all proprietary systems and related frameworks. Access is restored instantly. All I needed to do was click Send. However, tomorrow would be the pivotal day. Although the fissures were apparent, they still didn't. Thursday seemed like the prelude to a storm, and they were still waiting heavily, believing that the structure might collapse. Not only was the silence unsettling when I entered the workplace, but it was brittle, as though everyone in the building knew. I passed by rows of desks where conversations were reduced to nothing more than, "Something's wrong," but I was afraid to express it aloud. Whispers in which error screens flashed on displays and support tickets accumulated more quickly than they could reply. I noticed Anthony strolling by with the phone clamped to his ear in the server room, looked up and grimly nodded. I knew the system was collapsing without having to ask. The client dashboard, wouldn't load for a few users in Europe, and then the misfires data appeared. The indications were subtle. The reporting engine is choking on exports when timed-out notifications are not sent, its own scripts, and each problem was a sign of the same root cause. The system was now loudly warning them that their license was about to expire. Once I was back at my temporary station, I silently watched the logs and noticed that the screen was flooded with warnings and alerts about license status. Warning: access to essential modules will expire in 14 hours. Limited at 11:59 p.m. EST error authentication failed for the licensing API. No one has yet to contact me on the invalid renewal token, not Logan, HR, or even the board. They were frantically attempting to point fingers behind closed doors. I see Logan frantically searching for software licensing in his office in order to fix something they didn't comprehend. Catastrophe as Emily silently twitched under the strain she never agreed to. It would have been nearly comical if by lunchtime, one of our biggest clients experienced the first increase, which wasn't quite predictable. A Chicago financial firm's COO personally emailed since they were unable to access their quarterly analytics dashboard. 3 board members were there when Logan and CC stormed out of his office. Minutes later, his voice was strained and his face was red-tied. "Where's Jenna?" he asked. I stood calmly and said, "Right here." He came quickly, like a man who'd abruptly became aware that the fire he had been ignoring had spread to his front door. "Have you been experiencing these problems? If not, why didn't you?" I bent my head to see if anyone could inform me what was happening. Anthony brought it up in yesterday's meeting after we had been discussing it for 2 days. He blinked briefly, and I saw he inquired, attempting to mend the worry that was causing a break in his self-assured facade. Maintain his tone of voice. I hesitated, not because I was at a loss for words, but I wanted him to experience what it was like to wait for someone else's turn, because I wanted the silence to subside. Compassion. "That depends on what?" I said. His mouth was open, but he closed it, asking whether you still believed that I could be replaced. As agreed upon, I went back to my seat and will remain here till the conclusion of the day. Logan remained there for a little longer before withdrawing to his office, saying, "I'm no longer under contract." Most staff members swiftly averted their gazes after hearing everything, but the balance had changed, and they sensed it. That night, I departed at exactly 5 o'clock with no extra. Logan's office was still there when I passed it out of courtesy. Bent over his desk shoulders, gazing at a screen that was full with statistics that he was unable to correct. When I got home, I made a cup of tea because the sky outside my flat was getting darker and redder than the last rays of the day. Opened. The email draft one last time while seated at my desk. No changes were required. After clicking Send, Archer Systems received the legal revocation letter. The subject line was straightforward: Executive Team and their legal counsel. Software. License termination effective midnight. I sighed. It was finished. I just closed my laptop and let the weight fall on me instead of screaming or celebrating. Of 10 years fall from my shoulders, and everything they relied on will begin to fail on Friday. Not because I ruined anything, but rather because they released the one individual who had been keeping my cool Friday at 6 a.m. My alarm went off, but I was already awake. I had been drinking coffee at my kitchen window since 5 o'clock, observing the metropolis spread into life below. On the surface, it appeared to be just another morning, but I knew better, so I checked my email, and there were already a ton of responses. Arrive overnight with server warnings that were automatically created by legal inquiries. Attempting to renew the license at precisely 11:59 p.m. the previous evening was too late. My software's Archer Systems access had formally ended. It was unhacked and undamaged. Just removed the clean legal final. I took a long sip of coffee when they opened their eyes today and entered a world without a functional foundation. I accessed my silent little backdoor view of the systems by opening the remote monitoring panel. Diagnostics. I just observed the 7:32 a.m. system alert core without interfering. Alert analytics modules offline, error authentication server not. Responding dashboard, unavailable invalid license, critical client access disallowed. My phone buzzed Emily at 8 a.m., and I allowed it to ring once. On the second, I replied to Jenna, "Hey, everything is failing with the client login. Dashboards, internal portals, Logan is worried, and Anoni is losing it." Her voice was filled with fear, not of the catastrophe she had entered, but of herself. "Did you check the logs?" I inquired. Quietly. "Yes, it states that the license is void, but how is that possible?" I canceled silence. I whispered quietly. "But why didn't you tell anyone?" I said, "Just not recently." But Emily, it was never their software. They just pretended that it was. And after a moment of hesitation, she whispered, "Logan's going to..." Freak sounds like he already has. I hung up at 9:12. Before they could, the news reached me in the morning. Archer is hit by a system-wide failure. Financial platforms are unavailable to systems clients due to a major outage that is ongoing. My phone lit up once more at 9:30 a.m. This time from a blocked number that I didn't need. I assumed I responded, and Jenna Logan's voice sounded strained. "We are in a precarious situation, and I am aware that the software everything is not working, including the internal database and client portals. The board is calling, clients are threatening lawsuits, and the reporting tools. What the devil did you do?" I responded coolly, "I just stopped doing, but I didn't do anything. You can't be serious. We made a bargain, and you were expected to complete the changeover. You terminated the agreement. On your first day, a beat of silence, then a gentler gaze, and we can solve this. Come on, Jenna B. Tell me what you want, and I'll speak with the board." It's too late. "Fair name your price." I about burst out laughing, and now he wants to haggle. I said, "You don't get it, do you?" As the walls collapsed and the alarm sounded. "This has nothing to do with money. You fired the person who was keeping your business afloat, and now you're seeing what happens when that person departs." "Please," he whispered, and the panic subsided. "I'm not coming back, Logan," I murmured quietly in despair. "I've already moved on." "Perhaps you ought to as well." I hung up, and suddenly the burden I had been carrying for 10 years, every board meeting, every late-night thought, and every ignored suggestion where they were finally recognizing what I had been. Essential all along, and they were seeing my name hoisted without even mentioning it. Archer Systems was trending on social media by lunchtime, but it was too late. Clients are upset for the wrong reasons following the extensive Archer outage. according to an internal source. The company's stock drops 19% in morning trading due to a license failure. I watched the hysteria unfold as I reloaded my feed, investors removing clients who demanded explanations, and former staff posting thinly veiled messages, as I told you, and I didn't do any interviews. I didn't need to. Ruin them. They were doing that all along. No boasting, no revenge. Independently, Archer Systems was in free fall by Friday night. Their website had been reduced to a single error message, news outlets swarmed like vultures, support hotlines were overloaded, and executives in their glass tower rushed to revise contracts, reassure investors, and fabricate a story that no one was interested in. So in the meantime, with my knees folded beneath me, I sat on my balcony and watched the roar, the commotion, the fright, the flickering skyline in the dusk. It all felt so far now, as if you were witnessing a storm pass through a town you no longer called home. Logan's phone buzzed 6 times that day, so I put it on voicemail before I play it back, listen to the board. Everyone is turning to me for clarification, and legal claims there is no workaround for the locked software, which I don't have. I recognize I made a mistake, but I was haughty and didn't ask. The clients are threatening legal action without your consent. I didn't respect what you built, so please just give me a call. Near the end, his voice cracked a little, but it wasn't a man's voice. I didn't call him back because it was the sound of a man who had finally realized the price of taking shortcuts. Because I was the focus of this story, not Logan Pierce anymore. Regarding the mornings I arrived early, I gave everything I had for 10 years to a firm that treated me like a line item. On the weekends, I worked on fixing someone else's error. I shared ideas in meetings, but someone else repeat them more loudly, and now they had a ruined empire in their hands. Their own negligence. I checked my mailbox one last time on my laptop and saw dozens of offers. IT companies, startups, venture capitalists, and even some of Archer Systems' rivals who had developed a strong interest in the lady who overthrew a multi-million-dollar corporation without having to raise her voice. But I wasn't searching for work or to rebuild someone else's dream. So I clicked delete on every offer, compliment, and business message. Pitch gone, I wanted vision, not approval. I went for a stroll the following morning, into the downtown offices of a tiny but well-known venture capital firm. The founder was a woman I had known for years. When no one else could recall my name, she smiled and greeted me at a conference a while back. Jenna and word gets around quickly, Claire, so I grinned back. I've heard that we sat down in her sunny. She wasted no time at the corner office. What would you like to build? I advised her not to. No corporate rot, no faceless middlemen, just another bloated top-down IT company management. An agile, lean organization that valued creativity above red tape, where engineers had a voice and creators owned their work. Respect wasn't just a catchphrase. It was ingrained in the code. She nodded when I was done, saying, "We'll fund it whatever you need." Shook her hand, and suddenly I was the one who wrote instead of the one who had been fired on a Monday. Her own beginning, I made a fresh cup of coffee at home and started a blank document with the title, Foundations, a Blueprint for a New Type of Business. Not merely a business plan that didn't view loyalty as a sign of weakness, one that didn't think that being quiet meant being little, one that recognized the true expense of ignoring those who constructed the walls they supported. As I penned the phone rang once more. Logan Jenna sent me one last message. I resigned effective. I hope you're pleased right away because I briefly looked at the screen before deleting the message without responding, and I sensed a deeper sense of freedom they possessed rather than enjoyment. Attempted to remove me, but I had changed, and I had closed the laptop and went out onto the balcony where the city opened out in front of me. It was justice, not retaliation, and it tasted better than anything money could purchase because the finest form of retaliation, in actuality, is becoming unreachable by the person who attempted to bury you rather than destroying them. Once more.